6:39, Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Want to welcome on into the program EJ Haust. EJ, always great to have you on. How are you?
Good morning. Happy to be here.
All right, so I want to ask you just a lot of questions here. Number one, the Harris campaign has dropped another commercial. Folks can find this on my X feed. It's narrated by Julia Roberts, and if you listen, it's kind of a visual, but I'll describe it. You got a man and a wife, a couple of two couples, going to the ballot box, and the women are sort of knowingly looking at each other and glancing at each other because they've got a secret, and that secret is that they're going to vote for Kamala Harris, seemingly against the wishes of their husband. Listen in.
Your turn, honey.
In the one place in America where women still have a right to choose, you can vote any way you want, and no one will ever know.
Did you make the right choice?
Sure did, honey.
Remember, what happens in the booth stays in the booth. Vote Harris Walls. Vote Common Good is responsible for the contents of this ad.
So is it kind of weird? I mean, I'm asking women, EJ, is it kind of insulting that it's like the Democrats are trying to give women, permission to vote for Kamala Harris and sort of hiding the votes from the husbands and all that? It seems very sexist.
I have so many thoughts about this, and none of them are good to them. This is so awful. Imagine being in your most intimate relationship, the person that you are going to spend the rest of your entire life with, waking up with every single day, and you can't tell them how you're going to vote? Nonsense. Absolute nonsense. In fact, I would venture to say that if you didn't have those conversations with your spouse, then your relationship probably isn't going to last anyway, because you're morally different. These people are morally awful, trying to destroy families, relationships, marriages. Every time you turn around, they're telling us we should dislike or distrust each other. And that's an awful thing to push. It really and truly is. Imagine you're a young person, you're a young woman looking forward to marriage, and you think, gosh, am I going to have to, fake everything? Am I going to have to, lie to my spouse in something like voting? Absolutely ridiculous. These people are immoral, and they are destroying families. And this is just another example. Who approved this? How many levels of approval did this particular ad have to go through before they were like, yeah, that's the one. That's the one that we want to show everybody? Nonsense. These people are terrible, awful, immoral people.
So let me ask you, clearly we've covered that, and I totally agree with you on that. Joe Rogan, it's been a minute since you and I spoke. I don't think we've spoken yet since Donald Trump did his podcast with Joe Rogan and so forth. So let me just ask you, number one, how big of a deal is it that Donald Trump went to Austin 3 hours, sat down with Joe Rogan, had what I thought was a great conversation? Now in the news today, Joe Rogan is saying that Kamala Harris, among the things that she demanded was Rogan had to go to her wherever she was, and it was only going to be a 1 hour conversation. Mm-hmm. I don't think that Kamala Harris, I think the reason why she's putting these conditions on is because she doesn't want to actually do Joe Rogan. And this is her way of saying, listen, I tried and they don't want to do it.
Of course, absolutely. Very transparent that they are afraid, her campaign is afraid to sit down with Joe Rogan. You have to remember, most of what Donald Trump says is off script, right? Yep. He has his teleprompter for his speeches and such, but for every, interview, whether it's 3 hours with Joe Rogan or it's, just an hour with another podcast or it's a 15 minutes on a radio program, is unscripted. And that's because when he speaks off the cuff and about things that he truly believes in. He believes the words that are coming out of his mouth. The difference, of course, is that Kamala Harris has a very difficult time if she is unscripted. Ask her about her childhood, and she has a scripted answer for that. Talks about her mother, her grandmother, the middle-class family bit. Ask her about, immigration, and then, it's Donald Trump is awful. She comes out with those things. Everything is scripted for her, and she doesn't have more than an hour's worth of scripts up in that little head of hers. So, unfortunately, she probably will never do something like a 3 hour sit down with Joe Rogan.
Impact of the Joe Rogan podcast with Donald Trump on the election. What do you think?
Significant because of the audience that he reaches. And then also the things that are happening with like YouTube suppressing the full interview and not being able to find it. And, you know, that there was some sort of a glitch in the beginning. And then just yesterday we saw that it was being suppressed again. And so it's waking people up to this cabal media, right, where it's not just your legacy ABC, CBS, NBC News, but it's also the alphabet group, you know, Google, YouTube, etc. We're out there seeking information now, and we're finding it in places like Spotify and YouTube and other places that we weren't finding it before. And so, you know, Joe Rogan reaches all the men that Kamala Harris is trying so desperately to get on her side. And also those people who didn't really know much, believe it or not, about Joe Rogan before, but because Trump was on there, now they're like, okay, maybe I'll listen. So it's catching different groups of people that I think were a bit unexpected. It wasn't just the Trumpsters who were listening. It's been millions, tens of millions of views and listens to his podcast with Donald Trump.
Yeah, I don't know if Kamala Harris has done any podcast that has reached over 1 million, and you're talking about the Joe Rogan podcast. I mean, it is reaching millions and millions. Then you look at the clips that are also amassing millions. You know, some of the highlights as well. EJ, we're starting to see. You know, there is this story. It dropped, I think it was this morning, about how now you've got U.S. intelligence. They are fearing insider attacks on the election is likely. We have that. We have in the state of Washington also 2 instances in Portland, Oregon, where some ballot boxes have been set on fire. So I guess my question is, and we had some hijinks and shenanigans already in Pennsylvania, where they found a bunch of ballots that were same handwriting and just various instances of fraudulent ballots. And so I guess my question to you is, how confident are you in this upcoming election?
Good question. I think I have a healthy fear of whatever Plan B looks like for them, right? We know that when Donald Trump wins, they are not just going to roll over and say, oh, well, we lost this one, throw their hands up in the air and move on to the next election. They've already started to execute what Plan B might look like. There's certainly been the prosecutions. There will be more to come. I don't think it stops there. There will be a barrage of attacks unlike anything we've ever seen before. I think we know this. Some of it will be coordinated and some of it will not. You know, there's so many shenanigans already happening. Lancaster County Board of Elections in Pennsylvania announced they've uncovered a major voter fraud scheme in Pennsylvania. There's New Hampshire is talking about potentially flipping to Trump. I expect shenanigans there. Yep. There's the U.S. Postal Service refuses to disclose who paid for those 9 trucks transporting 9 million suspected counterfeit ballots from 2020. So, you know, these things have happened before. They're going to keep happening. I don't think we need to sit back on our laurels. The election is not over yet. Bring everybody to the polls, help him win the popular vote. But then expect that Plan B is going to be something probably we're not ready for, because these people are very clever. We know that some of it will be coordinated and other will just be, you know, those jerks that knock over Trump signs will find a way to set ballot boxes on fire and do other things. Like we know that it's not always that massive coordinated effort. Sometimes it's groupthink. They have sickened our society with this really dangerous groupthink that they have to win at all costs.
Well, and the thing that I am worried about with this headline, U.S. intelligence fear insider attack on the election is likely. My worry is, and I said this in a much longer statement earlier in the broadcast, one of my worries is that the Democrats will attack. That will sort of stop motion as Donald Trump is heading towards victory or has been victorious. That gives them the opportunity to drop in a bunch of out-of-state ballots, if you know what I mean. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, that is a worry. One more thing, EJ Haust is joining us. Megyn Kelly, I played this earlier in the show. by and large, most, if not all Democrats absolutely hated what Donald Trump did at the rally. Most conservatives, by and large, like it, except for Megyn Kelly. She didn't. This is what Megyn Kelly had to say about Donald Trump's Madison Square Garden rally.
It was too brotastic, okay?
So basically what she's saying is you have all of these men that were speaking. They had some women, too, some very powerful women, including Melania Trump, and at least Stefanik was there as well, and other women. But she's just saying it was too male. Donald Trump already has the males. They were trying to get female voters. What do you say to that?
I think female voters appreciate strong men. What's wrong with seeing some strong men? I think right now we need some strength in the White House and in charge. There were also plenty of women on stage and in the audience. And I don't know, Melania Trump was just gracious and beautiful.
Yes.
Absolutely wonderful. You know, I guess this is one of the rare occasions I disagree with Megyn Kelly. I didn't think it was brotastic at all. They mentioned women. They mentioned immigration. And again, strength. Wouldn't it be nice to just have some strength in the White House?
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with you. I've got about 45 seconds left. I'm not going to bother to play the joke, but what did you think about the Puerto Rican joke that the left is hyperventilating over? I've said my piece on this. I think it's much ado about nothing. What say you?
I say we should just stop talking about it. If we had just stopped talking about it from the very beginning and ignored it and just said it's a joke, silly, move on, and didn't have all these statements and coming out and defending jokes and all of the things, maybe it would have gone away. I do think by tomorrow we'll largely have forgotten about it. There'll be some more campaign events today. There'll be something else to steal the news cycle. But I don't think anybody owes an explanation for some comedian's joke, which, by the way, fell flat anyway, right? Like, even the audience was kind of like, whoa, they didn't really enjoy it.
Real quick, what are you seeing on, early voting? What are you seeing on the polling? I know Real Clear Politics still has Trump leading in all of the battleground states.
Yeah, I'm watching several different polling accounts, I guess, people that are looking very closely at things. Registrations is what I'm most concerned about, or what I've been watching most closely, because I think that tells us which counties are flipping in these battleground states, particularly in Pennsylvania, and I think that's a very good thing. But I think it's happening everywhere. So even in states like Massachusetts, if you can believe it, they've been having these standouts from Cape Cod to Boston to wherever, and thousands of people are coming out. We've given confidence because of what's happening in big battleground states. Some of these states we aren't really expecting to be Trump holdouts or Trump supporters are getting emboldened and confident to come out and show their support. New Hampshire is another one. I think we need to watch New Hampshire. Trump lost New Hampshire by about 60,000 votes, but Republicans flipped registrations by over 50,000 this time. So that's huge, right? So watching those registrations is helpful now. And then by the end of this week, I'll be watching the early voting totals and taking that a little bit more seriously.
All right, EJ, how can folks find you on X?
EJ Under the Radar, at EJ Under the Radar.